What is good, everybody? Welcome back to another episode brought to you by the League FFB. Today, we are finishing our updated rankings for August as we approach these redraft fantasy football drafts. Today, we're going to be talking about my top 24 tight ends for fantasy football. If you are not subscribed to the channel and you've missed the other updates at the quarterback, the running back, and the wide receiver position, I strongly suggest you subscribe to this channel right now. But without wasting any more time, let's hop right into today's video and let's start talking about these tight ends. All right, so as you can see, I have the tier maker pulled up on the screen to get through all 24 tight ends here in today's video. I got 7 tiers, so not only are you guys going to get a numeric rank for each of these players, but I'm also going to group them into kind of how I'm viewing these players if I'm drafting them on my fantasy football team. Obviously, if you're drafting the guys at the top, I view them as elite tight ends for fantasy football, and the guys at the bottom are more so just stashes on your bench to see if there's a little bit of upside at the tight end position. So let's just hop right into my first tier. This tier is going to consist of 3 players. It's going to be Brock Bowers, Trey McBride, and George Kittle. It's probably no surprise to anybody that this is the group of the elite tight ends. For me, Brock Bowers, this is a player who obviously had a record-setting rookie season for the Las Vegas Raiders. He has a lot of untapped touchdown potential in this offense as well, and some upgraded quarterback play, so he's a smash pick at the tight end position. Trey McBride is also a player who has some elite volume as a receiver in his own offense. Obviously didn't have a ton of touchdowns either last year. There was a point in time where everybody, Scott Hansen, on Red Zone was talking about, get Trey McBride into the end zone. That's kind of the untapped potential that he has here. So even if he sees a minor improvement in those touchdown numbers, I think he is really going to challenge for tight end 1 overall. And then George Kittle is the last player. I think he still belongs in this tier. He's a player who has weekly top 3 tight end upside in this offense. The target share is going to be legit, and I think he has a real shot at pushing for tight end 1 this year. Last year in fantasy points per game, he was amongst some of the best in the league, so he's definitely deserving of being in the elite tier. Now moving on to my safe tight end 1s, this is going to be a grouping of 3 more players. I have TJ Hockenson, Travis Kelce, and Sam LaPorta who make up this tier. For me, Hockenson is a very safe floor type of tight end 1. I think the ceiling is going to be tied to the development of it's not rookie quarterback, but basically rookie quarterback JJ McCarthy in this offense. But overall, he's going to be a top target for him in this offense, and we know this offense is very good for fantasy football production. Travis Kelce had a down year last year, but in a down year, he still finished as a top 6 tight end. I think he's a true bounce back type of candidate here this year, even despite the fact that he is 35 years old. And Sam LaPorta, I think, is a very fair priced asset to plug and play at the tight end position. Obviously, he is in a loaded offense. The only thing is it's going to be kind of volatile depending on how he's going to perform each and every week because they have other options like Gibbs, Monty, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jameson Williams. So it's going to be tough to project the spike weeks, but they will be there throughout the course of the year. Moving on to tier 3. Tier 3 is those solid tight end 1s, and this rounds out the top 10 for me in my rankings. I have David Njoku, Evan Engram, Mark Andrews, and Tucker Kraft in this tier. David Njoku to me is a very solid floor type of tight end 1 whose value is going to depend really on the quarterback situation there in Cleveland. If they can get it figured out, he should be a very good value in fantasy football drafts. Evan Engram is also a player that I think is going to be a little bit dependent on volume. He's going to be in a new role under Sean Payton here with the Denver Broncos, and I do think that's going to dictate a little bit of the fantasy football value that he's able to put out, but I do think he is a dark horse to finish as a top 5 tight end in fantasy this year, just because there is a lack of weapons behind Courtland Sutton there in Denver, and we do think that offense is one of the better offenses in football at the moment. Now, Mark Andrews is another player I want to talk about. He's a player that I think is a little bit more touchdown dependent and has become a little bit more touchdown dependent over the last couple of seasons. Obviously, he's still going to be in a great offense that is projected to score a ton of touchdowns, so that is what is kind of keeping him here in this tier, and I do believe there is a little bit of regression risk with Mark Andrews, but I think the floor is still safe enough in this Baltimore Ravens offense. And the last player is Tucker Kraft in this tier. Kind of a low volume tight end option, not going to see a ton of receptions, not going to see a ton of targets, but he does have some very high yak numbers. He's a touchdown dependent type of tight end as well, but this offense is going to be good in Green Bay. So unreliable, maybe some spike weeks, maybe some down weeks, but Tucker Kraft is still going to be a top 10 producer, or at least a top 10 guy in my rankings. Moving on to tier 4, this is going to be the upside tight ends, and there's a grouping of 5 guys in this tier for me. Coming in starting at 11, it's Tyler Warren, followed by Jake Ferguson, Dalton Kincaid, Kyle Pitts, and Colston Loveland. Starting with Tyler Warren here, I think he's a very versatile type of tight end. Obviously was drafted very highly by the Indianapolis Colts. I think he's kind of a deep sleeper, has some long-term intrigue by the Indianapolis Colts, and I think he's going to be the center point of this offense as a rookie. We'll see what that does for rookie producing type of numbers for fantasy football, but I do think Tyler Warren is going to be the centerpiece of this Colts passing game, and we kind of saw flashes of that in that first preseason game. Now, Jake Ferguson comes in for me at 12. I think he's kind of a bounce back candidate this year with Dak healthy. Obviously, he had a down 2024, a little bit of extra target competition here with George Pickens there, but overall, Jake Ferguson is going to be in a good offense, and with Dak healthy, I do see a little bit of improvement coming his way. Dalton Kincaid, obviously the usage last year was very moderate. I think he's a player that's in a murky rotation. Not that there's necessarily a ton of talented options ahead of him, but it's also just a bunch of guys where Josh Allen is passing the football around and spreading it around very evenly. The competition is lackluster, so there is room for improvement for Kincaid, but he's not very reliable at this point in time just based off of the usage we've seen from Buffalo. Now, Kyle Pitts comes in at 14 for me. He's obviously very talented. He's just another unreliable boom bust type of option for me. Obviously, you have guys like Drake London, Bijan Robinson, Darnell Mooney, and some other players in this offense. Pitts has been boom bust his entire career. We want to see him put it together to where he can give us another top 12 finish, and I'm really not going to be drafting him to be this elite producer on my fantasy football team. Now, Colston Loveland is the last guy here. He's kind of a late round rookie stash that I think you can add to your teams. Obviously, some upside with him as well. Drafted very highly by the Chicago Bears, a creative play caller in Ben Johnson. This is a crowded offense with Rome Odunze, DJ Moore, Colston Loveland, obviously Luther Burden, Cole Kmet, DeAndre Swift. There's tons of options in this offense, so probably similar to the Detroit Lions, funny enough, where it's very hard to predict who the boom players are each week. It's going to be the same with Colston Loveland, except this time he's a rookie, and it's harder to project the rookies each and every week. Moving on to tier 5, that is my streaming options, guys that I would be drafting as a bench tight end. Not typically am I drafting bench tight ends, but if you wanted to draft a second tight end, these would be the guys in consideration. I think Mike Gesicki, he's kind of this slot wide receiver style type of tight end. He has spike week potential, especially if Chase or Higgins miss time this year, but if they're not missing time, he's going to be very unreliable to start each and every week, but he's a fine bye week type of guy, injury fill-in type of guy as well. Dallas Goedert's another player in this tier. His weekly floor is shaky because he's in a crowded offense as well. AJ Brown, Devontae Smith, Saquon Barkley, they're not throwing the football as much as some of these other offenses, but at the end of the day, if there was an injury to one of those wide receivers, AJ or Devontae, I do think he has the chance here to see a little bit of a boost in value. Jonnu Smith's another player where he's going to be a very yak heavy type of tight end. You want him to do a lot with his legs after the catch. He's not going to see a ton of targets in this offense. I think Arthur Smith obviously has proven that he wanted Jonnu Smith here, but this offense overall is more of a run heavy, run focused type of offense, and I still think that Pat Freiermuth is going to be involved more than people want, so it's kind of going to kill both of those tight end options, at least in those lineup leagues where you have to pick a starter each and every week. Maybe in best ball you can find the weeks for this, but really this is just for your lineup leagues. I don't really trust Arthur Smith in this offense, so Jonnu, he's a streaming option for bye weeks or injuries, but that's about it. Now, Isaiah Likely is the last player in this tier for me. He has tight end 1 upside if Mark Andrews were to miss time, but I don't think he's a reliable asset with Mark Andrews healthy. We saw the majority of last year, obviously outside of week 1 where Isaiah Likely out-targeted him, Mark Andrews basically out-targeted him the rest of the way. So that's just a thing that's going to be annoying with Isaiah Likely. Mark Andrews is still going to command more targets, I think, each and every week than Likely does, but it's also worth noting that Isaiah Likely is dealing with a foot fracture at this time too, so he is doubtful for week 1, and that's why he's kind of moved down my rankings just a tiny bit. If he wasn't dealing with an injury, you could argue he could be at the top of this streaming tier. Let's move on to tier 6, where I have it titled the boring floor plays. I think these players, you can plug them in on a bye week, you can plug them in during injuries, and you know you're going to get some points, but you're not going to get a ceiling with these players. It's going to be Hunter Henry at 20 and Zach Ertz at 21. Hunter Henry, like I said, boring, low ceiling, streaming type of option, predictable production. You're going to have him in an offense where you want him to catch a touchdown. If he doesn't, it's probably not going to be that great of a week for Hunter Henry. Zach Ertz is very similar in a way. I think he has a safer floor than Hunter Henry does. You don't need him to get the touchdown. He's going to get a little bit more of the receiving work, but at age 34, there's really not a lot of juice left in the tank, so the ceiling is still pretty capped for a guy like Zach Ertz. And then last but not least, going into my tier 7, these are the early season stashes, guys you can take late in drafts or pick up off the waiver wire and just hold them in to see what happens over the first couple of weeks of the NFL season. I have Brenton Strange, Mason Taylor, and Chigakonkwo in this tier. Brenton Strange is interesting to me because he's obviously the starter now that Evan Engram is out of Jacksonville. I think he has some streaming appeal if there were some injuries to this offense as well. Should see an uptick, and I do think he's interesting as a player. We saw a little bit of flashes from him last year. Mason Taylor's another player, a rookie that has an every down role potential here in this offense for the New York Jets. He's worth an early season watch list type of spot on my bench, maybe just on the watch list for the waiver wire. You want to pick him up immediately if he does start doing things. But I do think this is a player where I am tempering the expectations early on because he is dealing with a high ankle sprain and he is questionable for week 1. But outside of Garrett Wilson, the receiving options in New York are abysmal and it's hard to trust anybody. So I will take a shot on Mason Taylor if I need to. And Chigakonkwo, the last guy here, athletic upside type of potential. We like the profile for a guy like Chig. He does have very minimal receiving competition in this offense, and there's a new quarterback in town in Cam Ward. So if the rookie quarterback in Cam Ward does rely on the tight end position like Chig, maybe he has a little bit of appeal, but still not somebody I'm going out and, spending a bunch of draft capital on. I really, when I'm looking at this list here, everybody outside of Colston Loveland, outside of that, upside tight end tier and below, I don't really care too much about drafting those guys or going out of my way to draft those guys. If I can get one of those top 15 options, I'm fine with one of those players on my team. And if I needed a guy during a bye week or something like that, I'll go find somebody on the waiver wire. But this is my top 24 tight ends for fantasy football this year. All right, so there you have it. Thank you guys for watching today's video. As always, if you enjoyed the content, you found something informative, entertaining, actionable, make sure to hit the like button. It is the best free way to show this channel some support. Also, make sure you guys are subscribed to this channel. Like I said at the beginning of the video, if you haven't seen those quarterbacks, those running backs, or those wide receiver ranking updates, I strongly encourage you to go check those out. And last but not least, make sure you go join our free Discord. We do have a free Discord linked in the description, helping you guys with your fantasy football teams 24/7, 365. But I have nothing else for you guys today, so I will see you on our next episode. But until then, peace out.